Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about a recession-proof business. And one of the things that I found interesting about watching the 2008, collapse of the housing crisis, um, and its repercussions in all of the trades, including landscaping, is the phenomena of course, a lot of people needing work. And yet I remember reading at the time about, some of the finest craftsmen in the industry. I think it was like a $100 million private home theater that was being built during the recession. And, certain major landscape projects, continuing, during the recession. And one of the things that struck me is that if there's a major stock market crash and the whole stock market decreases in value by 50%, and you're a billionaire, well, let's say you had 10 billion, now you only have 5 billion. You're not going to let the roses in your garden die because you only have 5 billion instead of 10 billion. You're not going to let cracks in the driveway go unrepaired and things like that because you only have $5 billion. And so what this points to is the fact that in the high end of the economy, there is always work. Landscaping, theater systems, cars, planes, travel, hairdressing, all that always continues in, the most successful circles of society, at least as in terms of money is concerned. And if you are someone who has a lot of money, if you're intelligent, you pick people you enjoy being around. Why? Because a few $1,000s, a few tens of thousands of whatever, isn't going to make a difference in your happiness in terms of money. But to be around someone who makes you laugh, who you enjoy talking to, and I'm having that kind of dynamic with the male, component of my current client, where we're having some very interesting conversations and reading books. I've been recommending some books to the client, and he paid me a great compliment. I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, where he said, I hope I know you. I'd enjoy knowing you for the rest of my life. And he's a little older than me. But that's a nice thing to have going on. And it's true that, when there's enough work and I could do work here or there, whatever, having a nice relationship with a client is probably more important than the work. But it can come out of the work. It's one of the primary ways of making connection in our culture is actually, being involved in some kind of business transaction. But if you enjoy working with someone and you've got the money, you're going to hire the people you enjoy working with. And I think that's one of the number one components. And of course, you want really high quality. And what this suggests in terms of a strategy for a recession-proof business is, in whatever area, be it landscaping or anything else, is that if you focus on learning the skill to do the best technique, to be in that top 1% of installation and design, well, number one. And two, develop one's inner resources, one's, whether it's a sense of humor, a sense of self-awareness, a sense of courtesy, graces, social graces that actually are fun to be with, that you will never want for work. Now, if you're a bad money manager and a bad estimator and all that, you may want for money, or you may not get rich, whether you work for the most successful people or not, but you will not want for work, and can at least survive. And so I think that's a generally good idea, to pick a certain niche, a certain field, and go about it with the ability and intention of being truly excellent. Now, the nice thing about this and why I bring it up is not that you should necessarily do this, but it's an empowering approach to when we understand that the best people, that in a recession, the government might cut costs on music lessons in school. Schools cut back, so this cut back. There might be a cutback here, a cutback there. But the top 1%, and even more so 1% of 1%, don't get cut back. I mean, Maria Callas doesn't stop singing because there's a recession. It is the more mediocre forms of music and stuff that get cut back. There's always room for the best, is I guess what I'm saying. And this is neither, I'm not talking about this from a sense of fair or not fair, or whether I like it or don't like it. What I'm bringing up is that if you never want to fear being poor, being without work again, if that thought fills you with some kind of panic or guilt or shame, and you care about it, you can set out in a very conscious strategy. It takes about 10 years, I would say, to become a master at something. 2.5 years maybe if it's more limited in scope and you're brilliant in that area. But let's say it takes 10 years for a typical person to be truly exceptional at certain things. You can develop that. And in my region of Marin, California, there's a landscaper that one of the tech millionaires, he sold a company for $200 million or so. And so he hired this landscaper to work on his property. And this guy builds the nicest stone walls that I've seen of a very particular style. He takes all different types of rocks and he custom grinds and polishes and cuts the rocks to make one of the tightest, most interesting, stone walls around. And these walls cost, 1,000 times more than a rock that I might build out of a dry stack, consistent material without any cutting or anything like that. But his client wants that. And there's not a lot of people with that particular skill. And so, someone with 200 million is not going to lay him off because there's a recession. They may slow things down a little bit or whatever and say, okay, we're not going to have a 10-person crew, but we're going to keep the person who really knows what they're doing. And so, I brought this in with the intention of framing opportunity and also framing the industry with abundance. Every person in human history has appreciated beauty at some level. The amount of land in the world that can be made more beautiful is, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times bigger than the amount of homes that can be made more beautiful. Everything can be made more beautiful. A palace, a house, a tenement, a car, and land can be made more beautiful. Well, there is more land. I mean, unless we were doing oceanscaping, there's more land than there is architecture. And so this talent of creating beautiful land, creating an area and making it more functional, more valuable, more beautiful than it was before, is a universal need. It's needed in Korea, it's needed in Japan, it's needed in the US, and it will be needed for the next 1,000 years, as long as there are people. And in Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, you have survival, you have security, you have a love and belonging, you have self-esteem, and you start moving on to the aesthetics. It's not just that I like myself, but I like myself with grace, or it's not just that I have some sense of being loved and tolerated and accepted, but I'm exquisitely appreciated. It moves towards beauty. The higher, the more successful one becomes, the more one appreciates beauty. And thus you have these, $200 million paintings, or, the finest work is always sought by the most successful. And so it's a nice business to be in, knowing that for the next 1,000 years, everyone on the planet will be wanting more beauty. And the more successful we are as a species and as a planet, the more we want beauty. And the more successful we are as individuals, the more we seek out others that are not only enjoyable to spend time with, but can create beauty. These two compasses, improving interpersonal relationships, one, and two, creating more and more beauty, more and more efficiently, adding beauty and functionality, creating more beauty more efficiently and with less time, creating more beauty more efficiently with less noise, with less dust, with less hassle. In other words, creating more and more value with less and less energy consumed, with less and less waste, with less and less burdens and stress and hassle. That's what it's all about. And so I thought I'd share that just as a compass to ask and guide, the year, the 30-day period. Have I learned to create something more beautifully in the last 30 days? Have I learned to engage more dynamically and enjoyably with my clients in the last 30 days? If so, we're moving towards a reality of profound abundance and profound freedom, a reality in which we can navigate around the world to varying degrees and give meaning and give value in a way that few other industries are able to do.